a bond from God, right? And you can't break it. I don't, but by saying this, what Francis is doing is opening the door to saying, okay, there may be a way that you can kind of be auto-annulled and make way for what our Eastern Orthodox brothers have been doing for centuries, by the way, and it's been okay, right? They've been doing it this way for centuries, and it hasn't had the dissolution of the family effect that we see here with the culture of casual divorce. So if we had an easy way to guide people to a second marriage, with it should include a period of, like I said, of penance, prayers, and certain requirements, and even the ceremony itself includes the fact that this is a penitent ceremony, because I really think this would actually help strengthen marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the whole thing has to be really analyzed. Let me just interrupt you for a second, 'cause I want to introduce Socka. Well, that's
Sorry
what
if
he
I
told me
was
his name
talking too
was.
much.
And no, it's fine. He's an atheist. I believe he's actually from Canada.
Oh, hey.
And
Sorry to talk about churchy stuff. This is supposed to be atheist night. I'll shut up now.
Oh, that's good. Carry on.
yeah, what was the broadcast you said you were part of? The channel?
I got a couple of them. One of the ones that I did do up till recently, until my schedule started interfering, was a program called Deeper Than Dogma, where we get together with theists and atheists and we discuss topics related to theology, philosophy, science, whatever was kind of on the menu for the week.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
That sounds interesting. That sounds like something I won't want to check out.
Yeah, what's the link? You want to say it or spell it or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, you just search it on for Deeper Than Dogma. I'll put the link in the sidebar here if you guys want to check it out. I recently moved back to the West Coast, and most of the people that I participated on the show with are from the East Coast time zone. So we don't do as many shows as we used to anymore now. Instead of them being weekly, they are kind of more along the lines of when we have time, when we feel like jumping in and doing it.
Yeah, that's pretty much my situation, is when I have time. I know Dean was telling me earlier that he was going to bed, and it's just that this time is like the best time for me because everything, the whole day's done with, and either I could just go to sleep or just pray or do something, or I'd rather do this. This time still have energy or not. So time is always a factor, it's always a problem.
Time is our most precious resource in many ways.
It is, but I wish there was a way to control it directly. I mean, I gotta talk to my former professor, Dr. Mikio Kaku, see if we could develop some kind of a time equalizing thing for something to be able to manipulate time, because sometimes it feels like I'm doing something that takes forever, and sometimes there's not enough time to do what I
Well,
need to
maybe
do.
we'll control time when the singularity arrives.
Maybe.
Sorry, when the singularity arrives.
Yeah, I was making a joke, yeah. I
Okay.
used to be big into Ray Kurzweil.
Oh, okay.
I'm an ex-atheist, actually, so that
What
always
is
makes conversations interesting.
you're an
Yeah, same here.
ex-atheist?
That's right.
So how did that work? Just out of curiosity, one day and you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I don't really believe in God. I don't have a belief in God. I don't have a good reason to believe in God. And then all of a sudden something happened, and switch was flicked, and you're like, okay, you know what? Now I have a good reason.
Well, there's always good reasons, logical reasons based on evidence to believe in God, but that took me a while, because frankly I was confused by what I would consider a lot of rhetoric, atheist rhetoric, scientism rhetoric, and I think the position came around to me in full that the argument for motion is really powerful and hard to ignore. Furthermore, if you get into questioning other things unseen, like the very existence of the laws of physics and the fact that they just keep going like that, seems an intellectually unsustainable position to me. The notion that you can empirically test for everything is clearly fraudulent on its face. No, you can't. Nobody can. that's impossible. Um, and even the argument from desire that you often hear in theist circles, which I used to think was weak. When I started studying evolutionary psychology, I just realized it made no sense. Richard Dawkins' notion of it as a mimetic virus is pure pseudoscience, utter poppycock, should be laughed at as much as any uh, con artist on the pseudoscience circuit. Um,
I mean,
we evolved,
Richard Dawkins still puts out a form of neo-Darwinism, which
which is
is
also nonsense. I know
which
he,
yeah, I mean, it's still heavily disputed. I mean, the
yeah,
are you denying that evolution happens at all?
of course not.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's fine. See, a lot of people get confused
And
with
I
that.
and in fact, I'll just say, at least in the atheist community I run in, I get tired of having creationists thrown at me. They've always, but anyway, yeah, no, I'm not a creationist.
Okay, no, yeah, it's an interesting thing because see the evolution is observed. We know evolution happens. The problem comes in when people try to conflate evolution, the actual process, with evolution, the theory that's trying to explain it. Is that the theory of evolution is the explanation for the natural phenomena that we do observe. Now, there are certain things within the theory of evolution that people are trying to jive with. There are certain things that we have different views on it, different positions on it.
Yeah,
There's no real kind of universally accepted things. The thing that is accepted is that things change. And then the mechanisms that go into that are the parts that are still, we have different theories that do work into this, that do explain it. But at the end of the day, evolution happens.
sure. Well, like I say, I almost get angry. I'm trying not to, like, yeah, who cares? This is such a silly, phony debate, and has been for so long, because the vast majority, not just of Catholics, were already teaching evolution in their schools when the Scopes monkey trial was going on. So we don't know, you know, Saint Augustine declared 1600 years ago that it would be a mistake to read the book of Genesis literally. That would be stupid and primitive, and nobody thought any of this crap until 19th century Protestant fundamentalists, mostly in America, started manufacturing this crap, although you'd see it pop up here and there. I think there was some second century Jew nobody heard of who wrote it up that way. Creationism is something most Christians never thought was, I mean, unless you go by popularity polls, but no authoritative Christian source ever was behind creationism. I'm so tired of that debate. But if you go into evolution, let's embrace it. It's pretty clear that we're wired for faith, and it doesn't make sense to suggest that it is merely a mass delusion. We evolved a need for the spiritual. It's there. In fact, you can show that atheism is a counter survival trait. You guys tend to remove your I mean, atheists tend to remove themselves from the gene pool. Um,
Sorry, what?
you guys tend to remove yourself from the gene pool.
Okay, how so?
I'm saying you guys now. I'm not trying to be hostile. I
No,
am
I'm just I mean, can
you
you maybe
live shorter lives, and you have fewer kids. Within
um,
another generation, I mean, you're shrinking worldwide because you don't live. The bigger issue is not that you don't live as long, although you don't live as long.
yeah, I
And
mean,
have a but
I've seen studies on that. By the way, I've seen studies on that talk about believers versus non-believers. And do you remember what the difference was between someone who had religious beliefs and someone who didn't have religious beliefs was?
no, what's more important is whether or not you regularly attend
Yeah,
service.
it's really funny. I mean, because I read that first off, and I was just like, "Holy, that's an interesting stat." I mean, if I find religion, how many more years can I get out of my life? And actually, what it turns out to be is like on average, it's anywhere between 6 months to a year.
Could be. I
Yeah,
won't dispute you. The bigger issue is that you don't have as many kids.
that's
Um,
that's another good point. But I think that again, the one of the three reasons for that is, and especially the whole, the population is shrinking, or whatever people want to say, explain it, is that these stats have to be taken in context of what they actually do say. And that is that, yeah, the world population is growing. The world population has been growing exponentially for the last 100 years, even a little bit longer than that. And the thing is, in recent times here, is that we do see in the developed world. What would have been formerly called the first world, we are seeing a huge decline in religiosity in those countries. We're seeing a lot more secularism come up. We're seeing a lot more people that don't necessarily recognize as atheists, but do recognize as non-believers or non-religious. And um,
Yeah.
the thing is that
And the negative social sequelae of
and
those are
the
already
first
appearing.
in the first, but the problem is that always, first world populations would always breed at or copulate or whatever at a lower rate than most developing countries or most third world countries. So we still see that now, is that the population growth is still growing at an exponential rate, and it's especially growing in places that are being developed, very developed countries, which is also the places where you find the higher percentiles of religiosity. So yeah, well, when you take a look at things like Islam growing throughout the world, a lot of the reason why Islam is growing throughout the world is because Islam is growing in
Okay.
these developing
What's
countries. But I mean,
okay?
you see Christianity staying stagnant in the developed worlds, if not decreasing, and you see atheism growing in the
That's
developed world.
actually a myth. That's actually a
Well,
myth
it's
that
not. It's not a
level.
myth.
No, it leveled
It's growing.
out.
It's growing at about a rate of still 1% per year, and that's been
Okay.
consistent since they've been tracking this since
Well, we'll
2000.
we'll we'll talk about your stats on that later because this isn't a competition. The fact is that worldwide, atheism is decreasing as a percentage of the entire population, not increasing. Worldwide, it's on the decrease. The decrease in religiosity in Americans is correlating with quite a few negative social sequelae that we can point to, and it appears that even in the United States, the people with the highest religiosity are the ones with the highest reproduction rate.
Yeah, I
That's
mean
still
that's
happening.
yeah, I mean because
Which
generally you're
which
going to find
with
this. Oh, let me address those 2 points. There
no,
is
let me finish. What
well, I
all
mean
boils down to the
I know
fact.
you just can't shotgun the points. I mean, there's two really good points there that I want to address first
No,
off.
you need to
Okay,
let me finish my point.
well you
Then
made
you can.
two of them.
No, I
I mean,
didn't.
so I mean,
I
okay, you yes, yeah, because I'm writing them
You're
down as you're going
disputing
through there.
you're disputing my data points. Let me get my data points out. You can dispute my data points. Let me give you the conclusion.
Okay,
Okay? Um, because I'm not here to get into a stats war with you. We can do
I
that.
mean,
I'll go
you're the one
back
that
and
brought up the rate of decrease. You're the one that started bringing up the stats of atheism and all this other stuff. So you were the one that, like, if you want to say stat war, you fired the first shot. So
now you're being combative.
I'm not. I'm just letting you know what you did.
You know what, man? So the conclusion, so I'm going to repeat my data points, which we can dispute if you want. They are merely data points. Um, Religious people have more children than atheists do. That is still ongoing. The theory that religion is merely a delusion has no scientific basis, and it appears that atheism is in fact a counter survival trait. Those are the points. Now, if you want to talk about stats overall, and you're going to say my stats are wrong, you win, or we can have that conversation when I can go back and get a big list for you, and we can have stat war flying back and forth. Or you can just say, Dean, I think your stats are wrong, or we'll talk about it offline. Whatever you want. I see no evidence that there's anything that makes atheists better people, smarter people, more intelligent people. There's no evidence for any of that. That it makes, and the evidence is overwhelming that atheists are less likely to have children. How can you justify the absurd proposition that this is all just a delusion?
Okay, well, I never said it was a delusion. I mean, when we start talking about mental states like that, I'm not going to make any calls about the soundness of your mental health or anything like that. But addressing your points that you brought up there is you're right. Um, Generally, uh, developing countries or poorly educated people do breed at higher rates than higher educated people. That's a stat. The other one is that whether or not the population of atheism is shrinking, it's not. The population of atheism is still growing. The percentile of people that recognize as atheism is not growing at the same rates that you still see religiosity grow at in the world. As so if you take a look at like the stats between what's projected between how many atheists are alive now and how many atheists are alive in 50, I think the one that Pew did was 2050. You see that the population for non-believers, atheists, does grow. It does grow by a few million. What you but the other problem is that the population of religions, especially Islam, are growing at a much faster rate. That they're represented more. So atheism isn't shrinking. It's just that its slice of the pie is getting smaller as religions, especially Islam, are getting much larger. Christianity throughout the world isn't growing or anything like that. But I mean, the point of these stats, the problem with these stats, however, is that who cares? We don't judge a proposition of how true it is by how many people believe it. So I mean, if you want to say that there's a naturally thing inside of us that seeks, God or agency or anything like that, I'm not even going to dispute that point. I think that's entirely possible that we are creatures that seek agency, and so therefore we do assign cause to certain things. I mean, even within your own opening thing there, where you said that you really find the argument for motion as a very convincing argument. I believe that. I believe that you do find it a convincing argument. I don't think that you've looked at it well enough to see all the flaws within that argument. But I mean, that's an example. That's an example of somebody that you're trying to assign agency to something.
I'm trying. Okay, prove that scientifically, or admit you just made it up.
What do you mean scientifically? You want me to use a
The-
scientific
all-
method to make propositions about a first mover? I mean,
no, 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 no. The other part.
which part?
Oh man. Now I have to admit that I'm being tired. I wasn't talking about that part. Oh, you asserted all this stuff about how I'm assigning agency to something.
Well, I mean, no. I
Where
said
are
I
you
said
getting
that
that?
that if you because you said earlier within what you're talking about is that you said that there is an evolutionary trait that has people look for faith. That evolutionary trait that and I've heard arguments like this before. We talk about how
No, actually, I'm making the other trade. I'm making the stronger argument that atheism is contraindicated by anti-evolution, that you will tend to snuff yourselves out over time, and
I mean, how do you get that? Because we
based on the
what?
worldwide. Okay, you just defeated. Okay, you defeated that, or you said you don't believe those stats, so we can say, all right, we got a stat disagreement. I see no evidence that. Well, okay. Actually, everything you just said there still conceded that as a total percentage, atheism is going down, which is evidence evolutionarily that atheism is bad for you.
No, it's
And
not.
that
It,
we
it went
have, and
actually,
that, and
actually,
that,
actually,
that is
the exact the
evolutionary
exact opposite.
evidence.
The exact opposite was is that I said that the only reason why the slice of the pie is getting smaller is because countries that are generally underdeveloped, undereducated, generally in more poverty, are countries that are generally have a faster growing populations and b
Okay.
more religiosity. You're not. You guys aren't being more represented here. Where you guys are being more represented is the numbers that are boosting up religion throughout the world isn't happening here. It's happening in places like Africa.
I
You
know,
know,
but what's happening here is not an increase in what we would really call atheism so much as a whole bunch of different superstitious beliefs. And ideologies, some more rational than others. They're
oh,
certainly not being.
did you notice that Sacerdotus left?
No, well, we can keep going. He'll be back, I'm sure.
Oh, it's going to
Um,
go off air in a couple minutes if he doesn't come back. But that's
um,
okay.
it looks to me like a counter survival trait. Maybe your stats defeat mine, or maybe mine are better than yours
Yeah,
because
but
I don't
I
come
don't
with.
understand what you mean by counter survival. I mean that's a point that you're probably going to have to elaborate on a little bit, because
I'm literally saying atheism is bad for you and
but
bad
how
for
how so?
society.
But even if that okay, let's hypothetically say you're true that this is true. Let's say that atheism is bad for you. Let's say that it is better for your health to believe in a god. Okay, that doesn't really address
and and more likely to reproduce
okay,
and more likely to reproduce. Therefore, we're talking about an evolutionary trait.
right, okay, but that doesn't mean that the proposition that gods exist is therefore more true. I mean,
Oh
yeah, it means that
no,
it means
actually, what it does is it gives more weight to the traditional argument from the desire and it is a reasonable proof for God.
Well, no,
A much weaker one than the argument for motion.
Well, the argument for motion is an argument on
Or
contingency, and it's an argument that that falls apart at many fundamental places.
only when you're listening to dorks like Richard Dawkins who can't argue his way out of a paper bag.
Richard Dawkins is an evolutionary zoologist or whatever.
I know.
He doesn't make
know.
he doesn't make any he wouldn't make any comments about that stuff. I mean, if you want to go into discussions about contingency, then
Okay, so you claim that all cosmological arguments have been defeated. Is that your claim?
I think that all cosmological arguments are based on a huge percentage of a huge amount of special pleading. Like
Okay.
they are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even within the argument, the standard Aquinas version of the argument for motion, that says that whatever is moved by something else. You know, when has an artificial terminator when it says that the motion that that God did to start everything did not require a previous motion. He's pure actuality of this motion, and
Yeah.
that's just an act of special pleading. It's just saying, okay, well, everything,
Your only alternative, sir, is to pursue is a series of causeless.
No. You can't do that.
Universe.
You can't do that.
Yes, I can
No.
do, sir.
No,
Your
because I'm not saying.
alternative
Okay,
hypothesis
Dean,
has-
hold on, Dean.
no.
Let me explain that. Okay, a causeless cause makes no sense. Okay, I will say that is that cause and effect are mutually exclusive. If there is a cause, there is effect. If there is an effect, there is a cause. These terms are you cannot define one without the other. But you can literally have. There's nothing illogical to say that an event can happen uncaused. That is entirely possible. There's nothing.
Sure, right.
There's nothing
Okay.
logically impossible to say that an event can happen uncaused. In fact, we have evidence. We have examples of events happening that are literally uncaused. So if we have observable evidence right now of an
You're
event,
talking about within quantum physics?
yeah, I mean, you take a look at things like radioactive. Take a look
okay.
at something like radioactive decay is a good example. Is a radioactive decay is a good example of an event that can happen without an antecedent cause before it.
Yeah,
Okay.
which only takes the special pleading of assuming the math, because you can't actually prove it one way or the other.
Well,
No,
you-
this
you
is
can-
special
you
pleading
can
on
prove
your
it.
part. No, this is
No,
special
you can't
pleading on
prove
your.
it. This is actually this is
If you're going to
this is
interrupt me again,
established.
sir. No,
Well,
sir, it's not established anywhere.
It is
in your
established.
little
It is established.
mind. That wait, no.
Are you
sorry.
telling me that the rate of radioactive decay that is something
No,
that is
you're changing
measurable?
the subject. You're changing the subject.
Okay.
You're talking about explaining away supposedly uncaused events because you can't determine what the cause is. This is special pleading on your part to try and get away from the reality that a lot of this is I've even seen how some of it is math that is used to explain away an unmoved mover. We have to assume there isn't one, so we just write our math that way. You can't get out of the reality that no, you have the alternative. You do have a burden of proof to the theist to explain your causeless universe. You have a burden of proof on that.
I don't. All we have to do is okay. This is how a logical argument works. Okay,
No, sir.
Hold
No,
on,
sir.
Dean. Are you going to interrupt me now?
No, actually.
Okay, so let me tell you how a logical argument works. Okay,
No, you're not going to do that because you're
propose.
condescending. Sir, goodbye.